Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. This is Rock and Roll Spock coming at you with the weekly TV roundup, the first one in 2015, and picking up where at least some of our shows left off in 2014. We're going to start off with the mid-season premiere of Scorpion. The episode opens with a cartel witness and his two CIA bodyguards being killed by an unseen person. At the same time, we see that Ralph is playing a computer game with a level that looks just like the safe house where the killings took place. The next morning, Walter has a rocket delivered to the garage to work on which will probably be a running plot point throughout the rest of the season. To refit, whereas Ralph, after leaving the garage and seeing the rocket pieces, parts, and whatnot, and arriving at school, gets arrested for involvement in the killings. At the DOJ, or at the Department of Justice, Walter reveals to Paige that he showed Ralph the dark web website from which Ralph found the game which he was playing. Then Ralph tells the team that he talked to the game designer and inadvertently put some input on the game, leading the team to find the game designer, who reveals he had a partner. In fact, the game designer reveals to just be a regular guy who had nothing to do with everything. It is also revealed over the course of the episode there was a recent CIA hack in which 6 missions had been put into question. Basically, agents involved in 6 operations have been put into this questionable safety. The team goes after the partner, first using the game designer to talk to the guy about the stuff he's added, and then through which they find out that 6 new levels, basically the remaining CIA missions, or the remaining CIA operations involved in the hack, are about to be uploaded to the game. However, one thing, talk between the game designer and his partner goes wrong, and in fact, the game designer gets stabbed. Cabe and Walter go after the partner with help from Ralph, who's playing, basically walking him through a level in the game, as it's right by where they're at as the level was based upon where they are. While Toby and Happy get the game designer to the hospital, things go well, and that's mainly the end of the episode. Also, it becomes very obvious that Ralph's dad really wants to get Ralph and Paige away from Scorpion, and it's usually a case before. It's not been a case of getting them away from Scorpion as much as just getting them with him. Now it's more a case of seeing the influence that the Scorpion team has on Ralph and not being entirely too happy about it. Presumably, that'll be a resolved plot point by the end of the season, as it is. It has its moments, but usually it just kind of makes me want to roll my eyes and not really pay attention to what's going on. Anyways, moving on to the mid-season return of Gotham. Or actually, no, Sleepy Hollow. That's what Sleepy Hollow first. Gotham after Sleepy Hollow. The episode opens shortly after the mid-season finale ended. Ichabod, Jenny, and Katrina coming. Ichabod, Jenny, Abby, and Katrina coming to after Henry killed Moloch. However, Henry is nowhere to be seen. We fast forward 6 weeks later. Life is quiet, and Ichabod is bored. Visit to an organic food store, however, gives, at least Ichabod, something to look into, while Abby just kind of lets him go for a bit. While investigating an area of woods near the farm, the two find 3 demons who are trying to find someone. We don't know yet who they're looking for, or we aren't told immediately who they're looking for. But then an angel comes in, and the three demons scurry away. Katrina and calls for Ichabod, asking, and she wants his okay to separate Abraham from the horsemen. Meanwhile, Abby talks with the angel, whose name is Orion, and it turns out he's here to kill the horsemen. Meanwhile, Holly and Jenny try to figure out how a demon locating stone works, and after figuring it out, they locate the recently escaped horseman, as Orion comes to basically while Katrina, Ichabod, Orion, and Abby are discussing the horseman, Katrina lets him go. Orion meets with Abby as Crane looks him up in various literature, which causes Ichabod to think twice about allying with themselves with him. It was said he was at various disasters shortly before they occurred, which makes Ichabod think that maybe he was there to cause them, not so much to help with them. And in fact, this is somewhat confirmed when Orion tells Abby that he means to bring about a golden age of humanity after he takes the power of the horsemen and judges mankind and removes the evil from our hearts. He is stopped in this endeavor, and Abraham and his weapon destroyed, and Abraham agrees to let Katrina try to help him, but he will not be a prisoner, and so he stays at so he is taking himself out of play, so to speak, and is waiting at his former residence. At the end of the episode, a man wanders into a convenience store, opens a gallon of milk, starts drinking out of it, and then when he turns to look at the clerk, asking if he has a means of paying for it, he asks to reveal it to be Captain Washington, and he is asking if he's in heaven, hell, purgatory, to which it's revealed that he is neither. He's in Sleepy Hollow. And that was where the episode ended. First off, I want to say I'm glad to see Captain Washington back, and I'm very curious to see where they're going to be going with that, as well. His story arc seemed kind of wrapped up pretty well before the mid-season finale, but like I said, I'm glad to see him back. So, anywho, moving on to Gotham. Opens with a play being performed at Arkham Asylum while Officer Jim Gordon watches. The play is interrupted by one of the inmates storming the stage and attacking one of the players. Gordon receives a bit of a dressing down from the asylum's director. That night, Gordon meets one Leslie Tompkins, who's dealing with the injured inmate. On the street, Selena finds a somewhat sick, probably probably hypothermic Ivy in an alleyway and takes her to Gordon's place, which appears to be in disuse. Penguin informs a group of fishermen that they owe more in their taxes. They've already called the cops on him, and the officer who shows up promptly punches Penguin in the face, knocking him out. At Arkham, Gordon discovers and investigates an attack on a prisoner. The prisoner seeming to have had two metal needles inserted into his head about here, and with electric current run through them. which is left. The first one is left to this one being left to vegetable. Fish Mooney makes a move to consolidate. Well, makes moves to consolidate herself as Falcone's successor, even if it is his fall is engineered by her. Back at Arkham, another inmate is attacked in the same manner, leading Gordon to call the Gotham Police Department. Bullock shows up and begins an investigation, even takes the director to the precinct for questioning. Meanwhile, Montoya ends things with Barbara once again, stating that the two of them together are toxic for one another. Now, separately speaking, both Gordon and Bullock discover the identity of the supposed identity of the attacker, Dorothy Duncan, an inmate who has been masquerading as a nurse. However, when she basically lets all the prisoners out, she is trampled to death. Maroni reveals that the Penguin's arrest was actually a lesson arranged by him to teach Penguin a little bit of humility. Finally, the medical examiner's report on Dorothy Duncan reveals that she was not actually the one attacking the inmates, but rather another victim as well, as she had the same burn marks on her neck, while the actual attacker turns out to be the inmate who had been running the play, and he escapes with one of the other inmates after killing Arkham's director, as well as one of the guards, and leaving a note for Gordon. For one thing, I was surprised at the lack of Bruce Wayne in the episode. Not complaining, it's just that seeing his evolution is something more of his evolution was something I was kind of hoping for, but the series isn't far from over, so. Moving on to the series premiere of Marvel's Agent Carter. First off, the premise of this is supposed to be the early days of S.H.I.E.L.D., which in the time frame it takes place in, was actually called the Strategic Science Reserve, as was seen quite prominently in the first Captain America movie. Focuses on Cap's SSR liaison, Peggy Carter. The episode actually opens with the supposed death scene of Captain America from the first Captain America movie, as well as a montage of both film footage and just regular and new footage of Peggy Carter's life since the war's end. Anyway, at the SSR, we find out that Howard Stark is being tried for selling military technology to the U.S.'s enemies. It's now concerned. However, he disappeared and did not show up. Well, he did not show up for a hearing and has disappeared. Can't be found in any of his houses or offices. After work, Peggy is reunited with him, and with Stark, who insists that he is being set up. Someone apparently drilled a hole in the bottom of one of his vaults and took what he calls his bad toys out. His bad toys being the things he invents that no one should have access to, friends or enemy, or friend or foe. The first thing on the list is a chemical formula stolen from Stark. Peggy manages to get the name of a fence, and she goes after The after it, only to find that it has already been weaponized. With some help from Stark's butler Edwin Jarvis, who has been left at her disposal, Peggy is able to neutralize the explosive, but around the same time, her roommate is killed by a potential buyer. Inspection of the device by Dr. Vanko at one of Stark's plants reveals the use of Vita-Rays in it, which points to the involvement of Roxxon chemicals. Peggy does some investigating and discovers that many of the devices have been made for a group called Leviathan. And by many of the devices, I mean a large rack in the back of a milk truck. One of the devices, however, goes off and destroys the Roxxon plant, turning a 200-acre plant into a ball of scrap. About, I would say, from the looks of it, 50 feet in diameter. Later, Jarvis and Stark share a phone call in which Jarvis observes that Peggy doesn't suspect at all and that she's an excellent choice. First off, it should be interesting to see Leviathan in play. However, we're not done with this week's Agent Carter yet. So, however, the series is... I don't know. I know that historically speaking, it's accurate in the way that women were treated after the war, but one would think that, I don't know, maybe she would have been treated better because of her, well, wartime experiences. But I'm an optimist and a humanist, so figure that, right? Anyways, moving on to the second episode of Agent Carter. Opens with Peggy looking at being shown one of Stark's houses as potential new living quarters. As we know, she's lost her. She can't stay in her apartment now, as her roommate was murdered. And in fact, it was not Peggy's apartment, but rather the roommate's apartment. The man who killed Peggy's roommate, however, continues to search on behalf of Leviathan. Peggy helps the SSR clear the Roxxon employees using a scanner that can detect Vita-Rays, and she actually finds one of the men who was involved at the plant, and manages to come up with reasoning to identify him, which of course leads the SSR agents to chase him down, and then they stop him and manage to arrest him. After some after an interesting interrogation, the SSR gets a lead on the milk truck with the devices, whereas Peggy already has a lead on it. The hitman also makes a move on said truck, and in fact catches up with it as Peggy, Jarvis, and the truck's not the actual driver of the truck, but the one who was borrowing it, are leaving. Peggy fights off the hitman and manages to stab him in the hand through the top of the truck as the shortly before one of the devices goes off, which destroys the truck and the hitman as well. And the man who had been using the truck to transfer the devices, however, is mortally injured upon leaving the truck and manages to die before he can pass along anything that Peggy at least anything that Peggy can decipher. Before he dies, he does, however, draw a symbol in the dirt, which I would presume we'll be seeing later. Also, Jarvis insists to Peggy that she not push people away regardless of her life, regardless of the fact that she's not exactly in the best job for having friends, but sometimes you have to have people close to you so that you have. I think the best way to really describe it would be it would give her, maybe if anything, something to fight for. A reason to fight other than just the normal. It's right to say I have to save everyone kind of thing. But anywho, that's this week's TV roundup. We'll be back next week with another one, and it'll be on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. It will also be a short one, as for one thing, there will not be a new Sleepy Hollow next week. There will only be one Agent Carter, so it looks like we're only getting we'll be getting just 3 shows next week. But as always, feel free to follow me on social media. Links to both Facebook and Twitter are down below. And this is Rock and Roll Spock signing off. Live long, rock hard.